This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 489 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and I'm down in Lafayette, Colorado for episode 489. And joining me is Nick Tedeschi from The Post. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Thank you for having me, Jamie.
The Post is very close to my heart. You all are brewing your 1,000th brew this week. And so just for some backstory, like as a family, my family are big fans of The Post. My son is celiac, as I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast know. And you all have gluten-free fried chicken. And so for many years now, whether it's this location or it's the Longmont location, the Fort Collins location when it did exist, like we are just big fans of The Post. And so through the years, you guys have paired great fried chicken with excellent beer. And you have a brewery right down here in Lafayette. When this brewery got started up, it was kind of a weird talk of the town. You hired this head brewer, brewmaster, Brian Selders, who was a former brewmaster of Dogfish Head. Brian had done his little career walk in the wilderness, like pursued a thing in design and web design, and then decided to get back into brewing, and then came here in The Post and created all these recipes. But I remember from the very start, these beers at The Post were smaller beers. They're beers that are geared towards pairing with food. So lots of beers in this sub 5% kind of range. Beers that have character, but beers that also don't step on the flavor of the food itself. And so you all have just kind of like, you just stay in that pocket. And it's a beautiful place for beer to be. Beer that is a complement to the experience, that amplifies things but doesn't have to drive the conversation, because the food here also helps drive that conversation. Anyway, I'm a big fan. My son was going to come down here with me because he is such a fan of The Post, but he is climbing a 14er this morning with some friends. And so he's got his own things going on this morning. We are going to talk about brewing small beer because that's what you love to do. And now you're even getting smaller with lower strength beer, which is just a strange one since you're in that 4 to 5 zone now. And like, how do you get smaller than that? Well, now you got to go into the 3s. We're going to talk about all the challenges around that. We're going to talk about things you love to do. Dark mild. You guys did a beautiful dark Mexican style lager, El Corn. It's won a gold medal at GABF in 2022. You've got your East County Fine Malt Liquor has won 3 World Beer Cup medals, 24, 25, and 26.
Yeah, not a small beer.
No, not a small beer. But, and of course, one of the original beers, got so large that Howdy Beer that you actually sold that brand on to another company here, and that's still making Howdy Beer. But those kinds of things, are just there. You've created some interesting beers that I love to drink that pair so well with food. And we're going to talk about all of that. But before we dive into today's episode, a quick word for brewers out there staring down a broken chiller. You know the pain. Warm fermenters, stressed yeast, and that sinking feeling when the repair quote lands in your inbox. With refrigerant regulations changing and the cost of obsolete refrigerants skyrocketing, sometimes the fix costs more than the unit's worth. G&D Chillers is there to help, whether you're a small brew pub or a large, full-scale production brewery. Don't throw good money at bad equipment. Invest in a solution that grows with your brewery and keeps your tanks cold when it counts. Big thanks to G&D Chillers for supporting this podcast since 2019. Reach out to them at gdchillers.com/podcast to learn how they can support these next years of your brewery's growth. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain, now with all the ease-of-use benefits of dry yeast. Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of dry tropics London yeast. Also, this episode is sponsored by PakTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PakTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PakTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit paktech-opi.com. That's paktech-opi.com. All right, Nick, tell us the post story. You've been here for a while.
I've been here since day one.
Yeah.
So I moved to Colorado from New England in late 2010. Got a job with a restaurant in Boulder, and then served there front of house. I worked front of house prior to brewing. After 3 years there, I was kind of in a weird spot of what I wanted to do moving forward, but always had a passion for home brewing, craft beer. My dad got me into it as a teen. And then the ownership of the restaurant said, we're opening a fried chicken restaurant and brewery. And I was like, oh, I'll go do that. So came over here, opened as a bartender. And then, obviously our opening brewmaster, Brian Selders, had a name for himself in the industry. So when they needed hands in there, I just got in there and, got one-on-one mentorship with him for 3 years, which was invaluable. Just got to pick his brain every single day. So
to study at the Selders Institute of Brewing Science.
Yeah, and also do all his cellar work for him, which I was happy to do.
Sure, of course.
But yeah, I mean, from the
this
get-go,
front of the house to back of house kind of transition is one that we hear all the time. And
absolutely.
There's a lot of top brewers out there that have made that kind of jump.
Yeah, and I think it helps a lot with at least for us, we're a brew pub. Hospitality is a big word right now in craft beer, and just coming from this side, I know how we can train our staff and talk about our beer. I know how it compare with the food we're serving here. And that was always kind of the mission statement here, was opening as a brew pub. We wanted to not just have good food and meh beer. We didn't want one sector of that to be weak. We wanted both to kind of be really strong, high quality, and kind of live symbiotically with each other. So that's kind of what we've been pushing the past 13 years. And
it's not just hey, we're going to brew what we want to drink and we'll sell the rest of it, which, is an okay strategy. But what an even better strategy to think, hey, if we can make the things we want to drink that also really pair incredibly well with the food that we serve.
Exactly.
Then that's going to be even better for everybody, right?
Yeah, and just being mindful of, how hard our kitchen works, the quality of food they're putting up. I love a good high IBU, really blow your palate off IPA sometimes. I think at a certain time that you really want that. But when someone's coming in here, I don't want to destroy their palate with a beer and then have them not really be able to enjoy their food. Both things kind of have to live harmoniously with each other. So it kind of keeps us a little bit more disciplined in the brewery too, because we always kind of have to have that in the back of our mind. Balance, drinkability, just keeping things really approachable so that it's a full experience when people come in here.
And you also haven't necessarily sacrificed on the kind of history and tradition of beer itself. You'd be hard pressed to find something like a dark mild on a lot of other breweries, tap lists. It's just not something that someone goes into a standalone tap room. It's like, I just want to sit here and drink a dark mild. Like, you have a stylistic, you have an experience expectation around that kind of thing, but you can do that in this kind of context.
Yeah, this setting, it works. And we also benefit. We have 5 locations right now. So that means we have, 5 full draft lists of our beer in, different regions of the Front Range. So we can make some of these more, esoteric, lesser popular beer styles. We have a smoked Marzen on right now. I don't know a lot of breweries, small breweries our size, that could make that and sell through it in 3 to 4 months like we do. It's a 15-barrel brew house, so we're making close to 30 kegs. But, having the flexibility of the 5 locations, we can make beers like a dark mild where, we're not blowing down the doors with it sales-wise if we're just one location.
It's true. But, and I think it's an interesting way to approach it, that having this kind of like holistic approach that also clearly, where food is an even bigger piece of it than the beer itself, just gives you, some freedom to kind of play around that, and having this kind of guaranteed place to sell all of that beer, means you don't have to go make it appeal out there to certain accounts. You can tell that kind of story around it.
Yeah, and we've done that before. I mean, we packaged meat hooks in 2015 and had it on, shelves statewide, full distro in the state. And we learned that, people, when they're shopping off premise for beer, they don't necessarily want that right now. If it doesn't say lager or IPA, it's probably not going to move too much. So we played that whole game up until the pandemic. And then we kind of scaled back down around 2020 to self-distro, just to our locations. Our restaurant group also has 7 to 8 other restaurant concepts that we sell beer to. So we just in itself, we have a good base of, locations where we're selling our beer and we can tell our story.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even though this is a part of a restaurant group, you don't cut corners on the beer itself. And, this kind of quality, as evidenced by all of the medals that you've consistently won over the years, speak to that kind of idea of quality. And, because there are certainly those restaurant groups that, the brewery is kind of tacked on. But this was a very intentional kind of piece all along.
Yeah, and I think that was the intention of ownership when the idea came about. Their history was obviously restaurants. I think he's owned a restaurant in Boulder since 1994, and that's when the group started. But he didn't want it to just the brewery to be an afterthought. So I think that's why Brian Selters was kind of targeted, because we knew he'd come in here and build a really good foundation of quality beer, quality above everything, and drinkability.
For sure. Well, let's talk about some of those beers, and I want to kind of understand Brian's approach, and then how you have continued that and made it your own and helped bring some of your own influence into that. Before we do, Oregon Hop Country is heaven to world-class lager varieties, and Indie Hops is proud to have introduced Oregon's newest hop, Lorien, in 2022. Lorien is in a growing list of beers that have found their way to the podium, and more importantly, into the hearts of lager lovers across the country. Discover Indie Hops Lorien. Side effects may include rampant festivity, sales bumps, and exceeded expectations. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And if you're like many podcast listeners, you've got a lot of beers at home and your regular fridge is at capacity. Enter the Midea 50/50 Flex, the industry's first dual-compartment 3-way convertible freezer. Here's what all of that means for you. Options. The 50/50 has the power to be all freezer, all fridge, or a little bit of both, but you'll probably want to use those 20 cubic feet as a massive garage-ready beer fridge. You can also change which side the door is on or how you want the shelves to be arranged. The 50/50 totally flexes to fit your life. Plus, it's designed to maintain a stable temperature, even in non-climate controlled conditions, so you can crack a cold one even on the warmest days in the man cave. Take your garage to the next level. Check out midea.com/US to get more info about this game changer today. And if your brewery is using fruit juice concentrates, purees, and blends, then why not source everything from a one-stop shop? Old Orchard might be best known for flavored blends, but if you need 100% purees or concentrates, then Old Orchard can likely help, even with options not listed on their website. Let Old Orchard know what you need at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Nick, what beer should we start with?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd probably start with malt liquor.
Let's start right at the top.
Let's start with the big one, the one we found the most recent success with. Yeah, that beer, our 10th anniversary was in 2024. Wanted to make a 10th anniversary beer. We've always kind of been tongue-in-cheek here. So I was like, how best can we celebrate 10 years? And let's make a malt liquor. Just sounded celebratory for me.
Sure.
Just knowing the history of malt liquor, just kind of interesting how it came about post-war and drinkers started shifting from beer to liquor and cocktails. So breweries at the time were like, kind of similar to what we're going through right now.
Sure.
We're losing sales, we're losing business. So we're going to create this product that's going to be marketed toward like the upper class as this really sophisticated beverage. So we've kind of gone that route with the marketing, and we serve it in a tulip. We've started to integrate now local malted corn from our friends at Root Shoot Malting up the street, and just, healthy fermentation on that thing. I'm a big fan of adjunct lagers. We're big fans of using corn in our beer here. We've been doing it since day one. If you're brewing American beer, I think you need to be using adjuncts. It's just part of the history. So yeah, it just has a clean fermentation and just wanted.
So tell me about that recipe. So,
Yeah.
so let's start with some of the fundamentals. ABV on this?
Yeah, so it's around 6.8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is not that big, but it's big.
It's not that big
for you guys.
Yeah, for us, we don't cross over. We've done imperial stouts before
Sure,
up in the
sure.
9s, but yeah, I'm a big fan of sessioning beers, and for me, the best beer is a pub ale where you're just going, sipping on this 4% beer, and it's basically just a vehicle for a good time, connection, friends, family,
sure.
food, community. So those are the types of beers I try to trend towards because that's kind of the vibe I want to create here. So we don't go too high, but yeah, 6.8. Mostly 2-row. We get our 2-row from Montana.
You're not doing it truly American with 6-row and corn.
Yeah, exactly.
We have some modern considerations there,
Yeah.
given the inability to even get 6-row these days.
Yeah. But it's about 15% corn, a little bit of light crystal malt in there just for body and some of those flavors. That's the malt profile. Delicate.
Is a consistent base malt across a bunch of 2-row across a bunch of your beers?
Yeah,
or?
so our base malt, it makes up like 60 to 70%. That's what sits in our silo, comes from Montana. And it's just a nice clean, gives body, not quite as light as a Pilsner malt, but it kind of is very versatile. Everything here, being a brew pub, we try to keep a lot of different styles on just to appease anybody who comes in here. That was something I learned after COVID.
Sure.
I just want to create beers for any style for people to just come in and enjoy. So it's a good base malt that can, handle itself in our Pilsner, but it can also handle itself in, amber lager, whatever else we're making, IPAs.
Sure. So then, 15% corn. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of just using corn. I just really like that roundness. You get the subtle sweetness, mostly ferments out, but I just like that flavor. It's the malt liquor recipe isn't too far off of our Mexican lager recipe.
Right.
It's just kind of amped up a little bit.
Sure.
Corn percentage is increased slightly, but the real important part,
between Mexican lager and cream ale and malt liquor, like you're working, you're in this kind of pocket.
Yeah, it's and to us, we found most success with those with the clean fermentation. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah.
And just really working to get that finishing gravity down. Balance when you're talking about a 7% malt liquor.
Right.
You really need to keep it from tasting too boozy.
Right.
The alcohol acts as a little sweetness in there, which is actually kind of nice.
Sure.
And expresses itself with kind of like green apple pear aromas, which play really nicely. So I think, to a point. You don't want too much green apple.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that healthy fermentation and driving that terminal gravity down, I think what makes that beer perceived as dry, but also have a sweetness to it.
So tell me about this corn. Are you then cereal mashing this? Or are you getting this processed in some sort of...
Yeah, so it's processed. We'll either use pre-gelatinized. Our brew system, it's a 2-vessel brew pub system, JV Northwest. I don't think they exist anymore. I think they were purchased years ago. But yeah, it's a mash lauter tun and then a kettle whirlpool. So no steam jacket on the mash tun. So everything's just a single step infusion mash. But we're in at like 149, a little lower. Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward, but we're getting, we're starting to introduce, because, we first made it in 2024 and then Root Shoot started making this malted corn available. So the last batch, maybe 2 batches, we've started introducing this malted corn into it. And just have found the corn flavor, it's just a little bit more robust. Obviously not intense corn flavor like DMS.
Sure. Right.
But it's just, I like.
How do you describe that flavor?
It's really interesting. I think it has a roundness for the mouthfeel. I like it for the mouthfeel, and then it just kind of has this. Yeah, it's really hard to describe. It's just this subtle sweetness. You can't really pinpoint popcorn, but it just has this back end flavor that you're just not going to get with barley malt.
Sure. So then let's kind of follow it through on the hot side process. You go through your single infusion mash. And then hops are pretty low on this one.
Just a bittering addition, pretty low bittering addition, nothing at the end of the boil. And then pitch we use Andechs here. That's
Really?
our house lager strain. Just on the versatility thing, we just have found we can brew a lot of different styles with it. I mean, for our Pilsners, I'd love to use 3470, but, we have 4 fermentation vessels back there, and we have a, full draft list of ales and lagers. So Andechs was the one we landed on, and we found success with it, with its versatility, but also, just when you win one of these major awards, it's really just validation of what we're doing here. I'm never just going to stick with something because we won an award with it, but we found current success and consistent success with Andechs. I've made a steam beer with it, fermented it up in the high 60s, and it came out really, really nice. So I just like the versatility of that yeast, and I think if you're taking good care of your yeast, for our size, we're looking at our yeast in a microscope, cell count, viability. So we're doing the math and pitching the exact, and if we're keeping it for longer than 2 days, we're washing it and feeding it. We don't push it past 2 weeks. So I think just having a good yeast management program here has helped us a lot in making these consistent, clean beers.
How long have you been using the Andechs yeast?
Probably, I want to say since probably like 2016. Those first few years, there was a Mexican lager strain.
There's this other brewery
3470.
down the road here, down I-25, who just did a podcast episode with a few months ago, and they talked about switching over to Andechs from their previous lager yeast. And I don't know, I think it's interesting to find a little cluster of Andechs brewers here in Colorado.
Yeah, I think the versatility is the thing I like most about it. And it's
when you say versatility, what do you mean by that?
Just the styles you can brew with it. We can make a malt liquor.
Yeah.
I really like it in our Pilsner. It gives it a little bit more of a malt character to it, and the malt presence is a little bit more forward than just those like really like crisp, clean, bitterness accentuating and dryness accentuating that you might get with a 3470. And then, like I said, steam beer. I mean, I've fermented Andechs in the high 60s, and it's created really flavorful beers.
Do you use it in any of the other beers where you might not expect a lager yeast, to be behind the scenes?
How do you mean?
Are you making any pale ales or things that are not marketed as lager using Andechs other than steam beer, obhesly?
Yeah, no steam beer
because all the kids are doing it these days. Nick, making IPA with 3470.
We've made we did a cold IPA probably like 2022, 2023, and did that with Andechs and came out surprisingly well. I mean, we fermented that thing warm, and I hadn't had this ever happen with lager yeast. We'll add some defoamer to the high gravity ales that we make just to prevent foam over, and came in the next day and it was just foam all over the floor. This lager, I've never seen a lager yeast do that. I was like, wow. And it just was, clean, passed all micro tests. So it wasn't anything on that end, but, so we've used it in an IPA, air quotes, before. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so malt liquor, you're fermenting with Andechs, and I imagine it takes a slightly larger pitch to hit that kind of ABV level and stay healthy. In terms of fermentation temperature, especially given that it's doing that much more work, are there any concerns when you get it up to that?
With this strain, we found, we'll ferment at 52, all of our lagers. We ferment in the low 50s, and then we'll always give it a diacetyl rest once it's about 2 to 3 degrees Plato above terminal gravity. But we found it doesn't do too much. It doesn't rough it up too much.
Yeah.
With our process, we're getting up to like 20 generations with our yeast strains. And that's
even at that higher ABV.
Even with the higher ABV. We're, looking at it. You can always start to tell when you look at it, viabilities go down. You can start to see the cells just not in the best shape. But yeah, we haven't run into any issues ever, flavor wise, nothing's been compromised with that. That's, kind of the first thing we'd look for. But we rarely run into stalled fermentations or not hitting terminal gravity. It's, we've got it pretty dialed here in terms of clean fermentations, consistent and predictable fermentation. Is And so then how long, talk me through that fermentation process. So you're in your low 50s and you're fermenting, and then, is it typical 10-ish, or the day fermentation?
What's the general scope of that?
I'd say with a beer like that, around day 8, you're starting to see it slow down. That's usually when it'll get bumped up, just so it gets in its diacetyl rest. Once it hits terminal, we'll harvest, look at it in the microscope, throw it in a yeast brink for the next batch. And then we'll perform a sensory VDK test on it about 1 day after terminal gravity. And if it passes, crash it to 32. If not, give it another day. We're pretty dialed in just because we've been doing it in this building for almost 13 years. I can pretty much predict the day it's going to pass VDK. I always give it the VDK. I'm never going to rely on that because you always have an outlier. But crash it down to 32 degrees. Our lagers, we found 2 weeks is the minimum. I'd love to go 4 to 6 weeks with all of our lagers. We actually had a batch of top rope during the COVID shutdown that got almost 2 months cold, and that was probably the best batch of top rope we ever made. But just with the size of our brewery and what we're putting out, 2 weeks is what we found. But I'll usually try to give malt liquor 3, just a little bit more of that lagering time.
Right.
And all in a uni tank. We don't have horizontals here, but we found good flavor, crisp.
How's it change over that 3 weeks of conditioning? Because that when I think about malt liquor, I think that is a pretty crucial piece of this. Like it has to have that kind of kind of cohesive integration, and especially like the way that it has to blend some of that fermentation character and some of that alcohol sweetness as you talked about before. Like it has to pull together into, and I think the term smooth gets overused, but has to feel integrated like that. And if any of the pieces stick out, then they become pretty noticeable.
Yeah, I'd say with all the lagers, not just malt liquor, it's like that first week you can taste it. It's just cleaning itself up. Those like fusel alcohols, you're getting some of that yeast drop out. So some of that, you get those dusty yeast flavors in the first couple samples. But I'd say after week 1, you start to get really refinement of the flavors. Yeah, I'd say once you push past the second week, it's this crispness that you kind of get from it. It is a, sweet beer just in terms of the alcohol's perception of being sweet, but that beer gets down to about, I'd say 1.8 degrees Plato, so it's fermented out. So after that first week, it's just that, and then we filter everything here. Once it hits the filter, it's that crisp and clean that you're just looking for.
Sure. What do you think is what is giving it this kind of consistent winning element that 3 World Beer Cup medals in 3 years for this beer? There's something to it that has to be setting it apart and making it just kind of resonate out there on judging tables. What if you were to try to articulate what that might be? What do you think it could be?
Jamie, if I could articulate that, then we'd have won a lot more medals. I wish I knew. For us,
it's this proximity to the warehouse.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Exactly. I mean, I tell that to a lot of people. Like there's especially World Beer Cup. People are shipping beers from across the world, and I throw them in my car and drive 10 minutes down the road.
Exactly.
Which
doesn't explain this one because there's no hops in this thing.
I know,
and so that I can see that for an IPA.
Yeah,
which might have some reason that other breweries around here do so well in IPA categories.
You might be onto something, but for us, it's just quality and consistency.
Yeah,
that's always kind of been the name of the game. I like our beers. We've always leaned on the beer brands, and kind of being a trusted brand versus, we're going to release new beers just constantly. We still release new seasonals. We probably have 20 to 30 beers total a year. And 5 of those are the cores, and some are rotating seasonals. But with these ones we bring back, I want it to have the Coke effect. When you open a Coke, you know exactly what it's going to taste like. When you go to McDonald's, I don't know the last time you went to McDonald's, I haven't been in years, but you know exactly what that's going to taste like. Budweiser, you know exactly what it's that trusted brand. So that's what we work really hard for. And that's collecting a lot of data in the brewery, and that's repetition and just being able to repeat ourselves. So, we found early success with that beer, and we've just been repeating it, and successes continued to come for it. So I don't know process wise what really sets it apart. I know those judges tables, it's hard. A lot of it's not luck, but a lot of it's a coin flip. Anybody can win. If you're putting up really good, technically sound beers, you have a chance. And I just think for that beer, maybe it's because, it's not a highly entered category. It's not why we entered it. But that might have something to do with it. But on our end, we're just trying to make really consistent beer, and repetition's important for us. Hitting all our targets, having similar fermentations, giving it the same amount of cold time, making sure the glycol machine doesn't go down so that it jumps up like it's at 32 degrees. Every batch is at 32 degrees for, 2.5 to 3 weeks. So I think it's just the repetition.
Executing on the fundamentals and making sure that everything's always right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Makes sense. And you also love seeing these kinds of, older American styles of beer that are treated with this same kind of approach to the craft. And, I think it's a cool thing to see that. And that's, that kind of, runs through a lot of yours. Another beer that you all do really well that have won for is, a dark Mexican style lager, also using corn. Maybe we can talk a little bit about brewing El Corn, the beer, as you've named it. Before we do that, Brews Malting has been supplying craft brewers with the highest quality base and specialty malts since the early 1980s. As Brews celebrates their 150th anniversary this year, they're proud to remain a fifth-generation family-owned company. They love to support the creativity and passion in craft brewing that results in amazing beers. All Brews malts are made in America, so you can count on a reliable supply chain. Barley is sourced from 300 growers in the Bighorn Basin of Wyoming and Montana. Plus, technical support is available through their Center of Malting Excellence. With 150 years of malting expertise, check out why so many craft brewers trust Brews for their specialty malt at brewingwithbrews.com. And running a brewery means juggling a lot, managing production, serving guests, selling online, and keeping everything moving behind the scenes. That's where Arrived comes in. What started as a point-of-sale system has grown into the technology your brewery runs on, built specifically for the teams behind great beer. Unlike generic systems, Arrived brings together taproom service, online sales, brewery management, payments, reporting, and growth tools into one complete platform. So instead of bouncing between systems, you can brew, serve, and sell all in one place. Visit Arrived, ARRYVED.com to learn more. Also, brewing has always been about creativity, but at scale, it's about control. For more than 100 years, Haas has worked with brewers to push what's possible with hops, and today that means more control over flavor, efficiency, and consistency. Their advanced products help you get more out of every brew, more flavor where you want it, less waste in the tanks, faster tank turns, and results you can count on batch after batch, year after year. From next-generation pellets like Lupacore and Lupamax to innovations like Incognito and Euphorix, Haas products fit seamlessly into your process from hot side through fermentation to the cold side. Advanced hop products are just one of the ways Haas is growing the future of brewing. Learn more at johnihaas.com. I shouldn't have jumped the gun and said we should just go talk about dark Mexican style lager, but it is one that I want to talk about. Is there another beer that you would rather talk about next before we go there?
We can talk about that one, but we only called that beer a dark Mexican style lager for a brief time.
Oh,
we call that an amber lager here.
Amber lager.
Amber lager. Because I think at its core, that's what it is.
Sure.
It originally was brewed on the brew sheet. It was like we had Top Rope, our Mexican style lager. It was like the Negro Modelo. Equivalent to that.
Sure.
But we just found it kind of just hit on the menu and where we were as an amber lager better. It's really fashioned after just like, Northeast, style amber lagers.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It has a good chunk of corn in it too.
Sure.
But yeah, same. We can talk about that beer. I love that beer.
Yeah, let's talk about amber lager then.
So big portion of Munich malt in there just to give it that really rich, robust malt character.
Any particular Munich malt that you really love?
We really like our friends up the road at Root Shoot.
Root Shoot, yeah.
Yep. So Root Shoot supplies that for us. We use their Munich 10. It's a little darker. You really just get that toasty malt character to it. And then light and dark crystal malts. So, you're layering in kind of these like toffee, light caramel like flavors.
Small percentages,
probably about 2% each. We use huskless dark malt carafa. Just, don't
Avoid
want
that kind of tannic
exactly.
extraction.
We don't want that acidity, those tannins. So just probably around 3 to 5% that. I haven't looked at the percentages
That's all
in
right,
years.
it's all right.
Yeah. And then corn, probably about 10% corn in that one too. Just to kind of
Same malted corn.
so we haven't switched that one over to the malted
Okay.
corn yet, because we just started kind of delving into that malted corn,
sure.
just seeing how it works for us. Malt liquor was the first for that one. So yeah, I mean, it's just, Sterling hop's a little bit more of a heavier hand
Okay.
on those, just
Sure.
to give that herbal, earthy complement. We
Very
like
American, yeah.
exactly. We like that bitterness to be up around 26 to 30. 26 is target. And it's just, really nice, balanced malt forward beer that kind of has this like earthy hop character to it. And for me personally, that's just such a nostalgia. That style of beer is such a nostalgia beer for me. Beer for me in general is a lot of memory and nostalgia.
Sure.
I think a great beer is a beer you've never had, but makes you feel nostalgic. When you drink it, kind of like brings you back to a time and place. And
Yeah.
a lot of amber lagers for me just remind me of sitting on a dock, eating fried clam strips, and just like overcasty day. So that beer, I love that beer a lot. We've been making it since 2015. It's undergone minor tweaks here and there along the years. And yeah,
What'd you tweak and why?
originally, I think it was dark crystal malt we were using in there. It was an English dark crystal, and we switched it over to Cara Bohemian from Bayerman, and just kind of just liked that profile a little bit more. And then using the local Munich malt that wasn't originally in there. We just, I don't know. I like to think of ingredients and honestly beer and the way you'd kind of think of bread. You want to drink something, you want to use something that was produced really close to you. It's going to be a fresher product in general, and that's not a knock on anything else, but just utilizing that root shoot malt. I keep pointing north because they're like right there.
You're Italian. You talk with your hands.
Exactly. I
You
talked with my
mentioned it
hands.
already.
I did. Yeah. I just.
But I knew what you were pointing to because I just came from up there.
Yeah, exactly. You drove past.
I did drive right. Well, not exactly, but pretty close. Pretty close.
So those are the minor tweaks. But yeah, that's such a well-balanced food beer for me. I feel like that beer you can just pair with anything. You can pair that with our fried chicken. You can pair it with a steak. You can pair it with a salad. So.
And amber sounds a little more inviting than dark, I guess.
Well,
in
there's
some
a
ways.
long. The beer doesn't have that long of a history. The name has a long history, and
Okay.
I'm still talking to people across the bar about like, I thought this was a Elkhorn. Wait, was this Elkhorn? It kind of had two names at once because we had
Elkhorn or Elkhorn.
Well, it was originally
all right.
it was originally Elkhorn, like the animal,
Right.
And we had at the time 3 Mexican themed concepts in our restaurant group. So we took the same beer, and there we kind of had it paired with Top Rope as the Elkhorn, the dark Mexican lager, and that's where it kind of had that dark Mexican label to it. And then when it was time to enter for GABF, you have to pick one name.
Yeah.
So we picked Elkhorn, the dark Mexican style lager, and then it won a silver that year. And we're like, okay, I guess we're stuck with this name. But yeah, at its core, it's always been just an amber lager, and yeah.
Fair. Okay. Well, what do you want to talk about next?
Good question.
We've been talking about lagers. Are there any other lagers before we kind of switch and talk about ales? And I assume that this Elkhorn is also the Andechs lager use.
Yeah, that one's Andechs. I mean, I'm just a big fan of our smoked lager. It's a smoked Marzen.
Smoked Märzen, really?
Yep. So up the street, root shoot, a lot of Vienna, Munich. A little T50 in there from Simpsons. I really like that crystal malt. I get a lot of honey out of it. So, and then about 25% beach smoked malt from Bayerman, from Bamberg. So you just get that quintessential smoke to it.
25% smoked malt. Okay.
Yes. Yep. So that's kind of the sweet spot. I mean, I've heard you can go up you can go up to 100. There's a threshold to how much smoke flavor you're actually going to get, but just to kind of let all the other ingredients do their thing yeah.
And the funny thing with smoked beer, and particularly with smoked malt, yes, there's a lot of beers, like Grodziska, you can make with 100% oak smoked wheat malt. If you're Schlenkerla, you're brewing with 100% smoked malt.
Yep.
Spezial, but they also are, Schlenkerla is making their own malt with their, exact spec that they're looking for and smokiness so that they can make a 100% smoked, beer. Whereas Bayerman and their smoked malt is, tends to be designed to be used like a specialty malt rather than as 100% of that malt. But, so I mean, we talk about what you can do, but it's more about what that malt, particular smoked malt, was designed to do.
Yeah.
And so you're using it the way that Bayerman tends to design it as a portion of specialty malt.
Yeah, especially in a beer like that where I want the Munich and Vienna to speak a little bit, and we want the T50 to provide this, really, to me, specific honey sweetness. And I just think that's a great food beer. And, when we're thinking about what we're doing here and every beer I make, we've been making that smoked beer for 3 years now. And it's, every beer dinner we do, I try to pair it with something. People love it. Huh. Our Estes Park location, I don't know if it's because it's up in Estes, but we find a lot of success with it up there. Like they sell it at a good grip. I think when people come in here, they're looking to pair beers with food and expand beyond just, a Pilsner or a Mexican lager. Those ones always do well for us and always will. But just being able to have a beer that specifically can really pair well with food and create a full experience. Those are beers I love to make.
And sweet and smoky, a little bit of sweet. I mean, we're not talking about sweet. We're not talking about sweet in a hazy IPA kind of way. We're talking about sweet in a lager, kind of context. But people are used to that with barbecue, and they have a kind of a familiarity with that whole concept of sweet and smoky and that balance.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a beer dinner here 2 months ago, and I knew I was going to use that beer for something. We actually brewed a beer specifically for that dinner to be paired with a dish, but I think I paired that beer with a halibut, and not something you'd normally see, but I kind of like to, I think you can pair any beer with any food as long as you have a good reason for it. Nobody can really tell you you're wrong. That's what I tell our staff here when they're trying to guide people towards beers to pair with something. As long as you're confident in it and have one reason why you think it pairs, you're not wrong. It was definitely a weird pairing, the smoked beer and the halibut, but it worked.
How did it work? Why did it work?
It was grain crusted. So you had this barley element to the food itself, and then the beurre blanc that was on there just kind of had the richness of that beurre blanc underneath the halibut. Just the smoke element and that really rich malt character just kind of played into the richness of that.
But I imagine also a little bit of that kind of phenolic structure helped, kind of tighten up this otherwise full and fatty, kind of sauce.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One of our old, contributing chefs, Chris Sinna, used to tell me that you can pair any food with any wine as long as the food is seasoned well.
That's a good point.
And, and so as long as the food is seasoned, as long as the food is properly seasoned, basically, any wine or beer, it takes a little bit more of an approach to kind of structure because the flavor range of beer is so much wider.
Yeah. And I mean, trying to get people to pair our stout with our Nashville hot chicken might be a stretch, but in my opinion, that richness kind of acts as when you have something hot, you want like a glass of milk. If you watch Hot Ones, they're always chugging milk on that show. So, stout, something really rich can kind of act as that, the heat
cutting some of that,
some of that heat. Yeah,
sure. And then a little bit of hops on there too, and a little bit of bitterness can also just kind of, in that sense, maybe amplify some of that heat if that's what you're really looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, I think hops and bitterness in food is an interesting thing. It can act as an amplifier. It can act as a palate cleanser, as we all know. So you can kind of use it in these two different ways. And so much of it is just the way you're going into it, how you're thinking about it going into it. And that's why I like talking to staff here and kind of helping them guide people and kind of help them discover. If I just gave you a plate of hot chicken and a stout, you might not have the same reaction to that pairing as if I explained to you why I think it paired well together.
This is interesting, and I don't think it's something I've really talked with anyone on the podcast about before. So I kind of want to maybe we're just going to sidetrack into talking about some of this. Are there any other really interesting ways that you think about food on the menu here and beers that may unexpectedly mesh well with some of those foods?
Yeah, the way I usually think about it is similar flavors, similar regions. We make a dry stout. We haven't made it in a few years, but we'll do fish fry on Wednesday, and it's just there's nothing better than a dry stout and a fish fry. But when I'm thinking about it, when I'm training people, it's like pick out specific, just like one specific thing about a beer. You could pick out 20 like singular keywords or identifying qualities of a beer. Crisp, clean, herbal, earthy. The vocabulary can go on,
right?
But take that and then find something similar in any food dish, and I think the similarity you'll find a lot more similarities than you normally would. If you really taste that dish, you're gonna find one thing that kind of links up or at least pairs well together.
What you're talking about is the incredible power of suggestion in building a framework for people. And I mean, I notice that all the time in the way the breweries use that kind of language to, even in their beer descriptions, give people the win. And I find that when you're talking about people that may not feel as savvy around beer, and even some that do, finding ways for people to get that internal win for themselves, like, oh yeah,
they feel part of it.
Yeah, I get that. Oh yeah, I totally get that. And you are in this kind of framework setting people up for that. You're trying to help guide that so that they can get that win.
Yeah, and I think people when they're going out right now, their value and what they're getting out of it. Every costs for everything are up right now. People are really particular right now and strategizing where they're spending their money. When they come to, our restaurants and brew pubs, they want the experience. And, that's not for some people just want to come in and they know what they like. I like my fried chicken. I like my Pilsner. I'm just going to do that. But a lot of people kind of want an experience. And part of that experience is, guiding them and having them be part of discovering something with food and beer and this experience that they might not find on their own.
Are there some other interesting ways that you found pairing some of the, because you're also finding ways to make styles, connect people to styles, and they may try beers that they wouldn't have considered themselves fans of, because you can make that suggestion that this, pairs really well with such and such. Are there, any more of those kinds of kind of interesting ways that you've found some of these other styles and help to build a customer base for them through the food?
It's interesting because it's like you're kind of explaining something that was already there, and it's we had a pub ale on for a while. It's fashioned after a best bitter, English malt, English yeast strain, UK hops, and fashioned after a UK water profile. And it's nothing new. It's nothing revelatory. It's just, a very classic pub ale. But being able to take our fish fry and someone looking for a beer pairing and say, hey, this is this beer pairing goes back hundreds, if not hundreds of years. And it's almost like they're discovering this thing that was just kind of there that they never would have ordered off the menu on their own. But just being able to, use the food as hey, this goes really well with this thing that's existed for hundreds of years. You should try it. And they get to discover this. Oh, wow. If I just tasted that beer on its own, it's, maybe a little bitter and I don't really like it, but I kind of was guided through this. And now it's opened a door.
Sure. And when you have that malt vinegar on your French fries and, your chips.
There is nothing better than that.
It all just kind of works as this symbiotic system. Sure. Well, let's talk about some of the ales that you all brew before we wrap up here, because we've talked about the kind of lager approach, but ales are also a piece of this. Is there a particular ale that we want to use as an entree into it?
Let's start with that GSD, the low strength beer we're reintroducing.
All right. So tell me about this low strength beer.
So we've made this beer was in production 2018, 2019, and kind of fashion. I love a pub ale is probably my favorite kind of beer.
Yeah.
Kind of fashioned after an ordinary bitter, just in the 3s, 3.3. This batch is 3.3%. But not sacrificing any flavor. Making sure it's got a little body to it, having a clean fermentation with a little bit of ester production. I really like this American hop that has noble kind of qualities to it. That herbal, earthy, but almost a little fruity.
What hop?
This is the first time we've used it. It's a Adeena from
Adeena.
Crosby. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of like the noble qualities while it also has a little bit of orange, light stone fruit. Our house ale strain, got it down. We got that beer down.
We had a good conversation about Adeena a couple episodes ago on the last episode of the Firestone Walker project we worked on, source material, where with the Roy Crosby folks, Mike Roy and Matt Brindleton and Vinny Chilurzo, talking about that. But Adeena definitely got some play out there. People are talking about it.
Yeah, we've worked with Roy since Open. I think Brian had a relationship with them, and they were always great. So once that partnership between them and Crosby happened, we've been using Crosby, they were. I started looking into Adeena and where we could apply it. Thought about using it for trying it in our Pilsner for a minute. When we originally made this beer, YCH had a hop. I think it eventually was given the name Independence. I loved that TRI 2303. I loved that hop. I think we were one of the beta users of that hop. But it was very similar. It was this really low alpha, had this nobility to it, but it just kind of had this American citrus stone fruit thing. And I'm kind of finding similar things with the Adeena. So I haven't used Adeena in any other beers. I'm sure in a higher quantity, kind of blended with another hop, you can, it'll be expressive in other ways, but just as this singular hop in this beer and in such a delicate beer, it's, it's still in the fermenter right now. It's cleaned up pretty well, but I'm starting to get that expression. So after filtration and, the rest of the yeast gets cleaned out, fully carbonated, really interested to see, but I'm really happy with, how delicate but pronounced that hop can be right now, especially in a 3.3% beer.
Yeah. So 3.3%, kind of brewed in this somewhat British, kind of style, same kind of, silo 2-row base malt.
A little bit lower of the silo malt. We used Troubadour malting out of Fort Collins, really close to you. We worked with Chris. We're using their Serenade, their English variety, just to give it that little bit of body.
Because it's such a small beer.
Yeah, when you get down this low, we don't want it to be thin. We don't want to compromise flavor experience. I want people to, who want a low strength beer, mid strength.
You're not decocting this to build more body at that low strength.
Yeah. So using his malt at probably like 60, 65%.
Oh, okay.
A little bit of 2-row in there as well. A little bit of crystal malt. I think every UK fashioned beer should have some crystal malt in it, just to give that like a little chewy. I like that. So it's got some English dark crystal in there, probably at about like 2 to 3%.
Okay.
And then acidulated malt just for pH, mash pH management.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, so some Adeena hot side. Imagine you're not pushing it too late in that boil.
It's actually pretty. It's so it got a 60-minute bittering edition with our bittering hop. We use Columbus, and then it got a edition 10 minutes before the end of the boil, and then a Whirlpool edition too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whirlpool edition.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Modern. Our dark mild gets a Whirlpool edition.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
I like that balance of you have your bittering edition.
Yeah.
I just let, we're ending the boil, starting our Whirlpool, and then we, 10 to 15 minute Whirlpool, 10 to 15 minute rest. We don't cool the wort down for a beer like this. For the Whirlpool edition, we're throwing it in at, boiling temps. Yeah. So you are getting some of that, bitterness out of it. But I just think for flavor expression, throwing them in at that time, especially.
How do you split that hot side between a 10-minute and a Whirlpool? Is it half and half?
It's usually about 10% of the BUs go in. All of it's usually measured by BU. Yeah. I'd say about 10% at the 10-minute edition, and then probably around like 30 to 40% go in at the end. So we are getting some good amount of bitterness. Granted, a beer like this is around 20 IBU, but
that's still a lot more that's going in the Whirlpool than is going in at that 10-minute edition. So yeah. backloading it. I mean, obviously most of the bitterness is still coming at the very top.
And with how low it is, we want the malt to be expressive, but I want there to be a hop presence in this beer as well, aromatically. So putting them in at the end there is just really going to give us that.
Sure. Is there some kind of textural component that also then comes from these hops? I mean, that is something that's nice about the low alpha hops, is that they're contributing more than just flavor. Potentially that oil and some of the just green matter ends up also kind of helping bulk up things a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a reason we throw a lot in at the end there, is just to give it, the flavor. But it's in there, especially 3.3%. You're going to get some of that.
Right. Talk to me about fermentation.
Fermentation,
because now it's super delicate. Like it has to, you've got to nail this.
Yeah. So 8 degrees Plato is starting gravity, and it's our house ale strain, just like our lager strain. I mean, we keep them very similar in terms of maintenance. And yeah, I mean, it's a quick.
What school of yeast is your house ale strain?
Our house ale strain's a American ale strain, not a Chico.
Yeah.
But just I think right now it's a BSI 9.6.
Yeah.
And we found success with that. Again, it's all, it's the versatility. We have 4 fermentation vessels, and we're trying to have a lot of different beer styles on the menu. So we found success with this with our IPAs. This is what we use in our hazy. Our hazy probably has a little bit, it's fermented out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I kind of like that in a hazy. I like the low bitterness. I want there to be some bitterness.
Right.
But yeah, so this American strain it's versatile for us. And at this point, it's predictable. That beer, I mean, it was done fermenting in probably 3 days. So we were in the next morning bumping it up to diacetyl rest. This one fermented at about 65, and then de-rest up in the low 70s. And then once it cleared VDKs, probably on like day 7 or 8, crashed it. It's been in there it's probably been cold for about 10 days. And all of our beers kind of undergo that process.
Yeah.
We're not doing, even with our IPAs, we're fermenting, bumping it up to diacetyl rest, harvesting, dry hopping, giving it a couple days on dry hops before we dump it past VDK, and then just crash it down to 32 degrees.
Seems so straightforward and just.
I mean, it is. It can be a little simple, but that just because it's simple doesn't mean you can't make great beer that way.
Sure. So just one dry hop dump, and then the unitank does its thing, or do you don't continue to?
Oh no, we drop yeast continuously.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say like every 2 to 3 days we're dropping yeast on all beers.
Sure.
Yep.
Shaving the tank.
Exactly.
That's the term that Evan loves to use for it.
Yeah.
Just making sure that that's staying clean as it's going through that process.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And then anything else to it after that?
The GSD, no,
it's still in the tank.
It's still in the tank, but I mean, even in 2018, 2019, when we made it, it just undergoes filtration. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
And then is in the English kind of style, is this a lower carbonation that helps kind of push some of the fullness?
Yeah, that's definitely what we try. We want it to be a little bit more of a softer carb on that. But yeah, I'd say we're going to be around like 2.
But then there's still the draft systems that you got to.
Yeah, it'll be around 2.6, where a lot of our other beers we'll push up to 2.75, 2.8 almost.
Right.
Yeah, volumes.
Yeah, because normally we love that kind of sparkly crispness, especially in the lager side. But then in this, as a lower strength ale, you definitely lose some of the body if you push the carbonation that high.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Can't wait to taste it once it's out. All right. Well, so you've been doing this from the very early days of the post, Nick. You've watched this. But having that kind of consistency here over all of that time is somewhat unusual in the brewing world. You've gotten to watch the hospitality world go through a whole bunch of changes in that same meantime. What keeps you going? What keeps you excited about beer these days? And and what continues to drive your own exploration here?
Well, one thing I'm excited about is it's not like a rediscovery of hospitality. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I think that's a big thing that's coming up right now. I think, craft beer went through its big.
Sure, it was the keynote of the Craft Brewers Conference this year.
Exactly.
Unreasonable hospitality.
Yep. Will
Yeah.
Yep.
We are realizing that it's not just about making a great product.
Yeah, and I think, in the 2010s, you could, going to a brewery was an exciting thing, and it drove a lot of people because it was this new, exciting experience. A bartender, this is just a hypothetical, but a bartender could, treat you like shit and flip you off and say, here's your beer. And you'd be like, oh my God, this place is great. Nowadays, 15 years later, people really want to be taken care of when they go out, and they want that hospitality. So I think just our coming from that world and us opening with that sensibility and that kind of being a core value, I think it's, that to me is an exciting thing because it's something that we offer here. It's not just good food and good beer. You're going to get a full experience here, and you're going to be guided on the menu, and you're going to feel like you're home. To me, that's what hospitality is. It's treating people like they're in your house. And that's kind of how we train people here. So an exciting thing for me, is, another thing that's really exciting me in the industry is kind of this low mid-strength beer push. That's what I like to drink. My craft beer journey of what I personally like to enjoy is, gone through, IPA, sour, pretty much everybody.
Sure.
But at this point in my life, and what I liked earlier on was just really low strength but flavorful and high quality beers. So I'm kind of excited that that's kind of becoming a thing. Could totally just be a trend that we're seeing. It's definitely like peaking right now, but that's one I wouldn't mind sticking around because that's what I love to make is really low gravity beers. I feel like that's a delicate balance of having flavor and not just losing all that into like thinness of your product. So I like to make it. So I'm glad that's kind of a thing right now.
There's a beautiful technical challenge to that of building high quality beers at that lower strength. And it's such a funny one because at the same time you see in the commercial side and the packaged beer side, 10% beers full of fruity hop flavor, selling in stovepipes at convenience stores. And so, we're bookending things now in the beer world.
Yeah.
But I think that this low strength, mid strength, low threes, whether it's a Czech 8 degree pale lager or whether it's a 3.3%, British inspired beer, those are beautiful places for beer to be, especially if I'm driving and going out and drinking, and I want to be able to drink a few.
Absolutely.
As enjoy a meal and spend some time with friends. No, I think those are fantastic things that might be a little different than if I grab a couple of cans of double hazy IPA that I just
that's a different experience,
and take that home and and drill through it. So, but all of those are valid, and the beer world's big enough and has enough space for all of those. And
that's the beauty of it.
It is the beauty of it. And I think that's a great place to bring it to a close. G&D's Elite 290 Micro Series is built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain. The ease of use of dry yeast. Pactex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. Indie Hops Lorient has found its way into the hearts of lager lovers across the country. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Old Orchard is your one-stop shop for fruit juice concentrates, purees, and blends. Check out why so many craft brewers trust Brews for their specialty malt. Arrived brings together all the tools you need in one complete platform, and learn more about how Haas is growing the future of brewing at johnihaas.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, and help us continue to bring these great conversations to you all week after week. Nick, if people want to learn more about the Post, the many locations that you have here in Colorado, both the phenomenal chicken and other menu items, and also the excellent award-winning, medal-winning beer that you make, where can they find more about you?
I'd say follow on Instagram at Post Colorado. And then the website, thepostcolorado.com. That's probably the easiest way to find us. And then, we have locations in Estes Park, Boulder, Longmont, Lafayette, where the brewery is, and then South Denver.
It's phenomenal stuff. Like I said, I'm a big fan, and maybe I'm just doing this to get cred with my own kid, because he's such a big Post fan too. But no, seriously, we went to Post for Mother's Day a couple weeks ago.
We appreciate it. I'd love to hear that. That's amazing.
It's one of my favorites, but also, the food is incredible, and the beer is also incredible, and the two things work together so well, and it's just been a favorite for a decade plus now. So you all are doing great work. Cheers.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media @craftbeerbrew.